There are moments in life when the quiet world around us suddenly feels alive, when the air seems to hold its breath, when something unseen moves with purpose, and when a young heart discovers that the line between danger and deliverance can be as thin as a single whispered word. And this story begins on a late autumn afternoon when 16-year-old Noah stepped into the woods behind his home seeking a little peace after a week that had worn him down in ways he could not explain. Because his parents had been arguing again, school had felt heavier than usual, and his mind had filled with a pressure he didn't know how to release. So he walked along the familiar trail, hoping the silence between the trees would steady him. And he kicked through fallen leaves as the golden light dimmed under tall branches, unaware that his path was guiding him toward a moment that would mark him forever. He had wandered these woods since he was a child, building forts, climbing trees, chasing shadows, and he believed he knew every curve and dip of the land. Yet that day, everything felt slightly off, as if the forest was waiting for something. And although he could not name the feeling, he sensed an invisible thread pulling him deeper. And he followed it because it felt strangely comforting despite the faint chill rising around him. He slowed near a fork in the trail where the ground sloped sharply, a slope he rarely approached because the soil often grew loose in the colder months. But as he paused, he heard only the wind drifting through branches and the distant rustle of something small moving through the brush. So he told himself he was imagining the odd tension inside him and stepped further until the path grew narrow and dim, and the quiet pressed against him like soft hands. He checked his phone, but there was no signal, which was normal in that part of the forest, and he placed it back in his pocket, unaware that the next moments would save his life. As he walked, he let his thoughts spill out in the silence, wondering why everything lately felt so heavy, wondering if God saw him at all or if he was simply drifting through life unnoticed, wondering if there was meaning behind the sudden loneliness he felt even when surrounded by people. And he sighed as he reached a patch of earth covered in leaves that seemed recently disturbed, as though something large had passed through. Yet he continued because he felt strangely protected even in the growing stillness. And then it happened, so softly at first he wasn't sure it was real. Noah, a whisper. Barely breath, barely sound, but unmistakably his name. He froze and turned, expecting to see someone behind him, but there was only the dim trail stretching back into shadows. He swallowed hard, convinced it must have been the wind shaping itself into a coincidence, and he whispered, "Hello?" But the forest stayed silent. He took another step and then heard it again. This time clearer, closer, almost warm in tone. A whisper that felt gentle rather than frightening. "Noah." He spun around again, heart beating fast, but still saw nothing. And yet he felt a strange calm wash over him, as if the whisper carried something protective rather than harmful. He had never believed stories about angels or divine voices, though his grandmother used to tell him that God could call to people in ways the world could not explain. And that memory surfaced now in a way that made the hairs on his arms rise. He stepped backward involuntarily, as though guided, and when he did, his foot pressed against a patch of ground that suddenly crumbled beneath the weight of his heel. And he gasped as loose soil gave way where he had been preparing to step just moments earlier. A jolt of fear shot through him because he realized that if he had taken one more stride forward, he would have plunged into the drop hidden behind tangled roots. A drop at least 15 feet down into jagged rocks exposed by the recent rain. He stared in disbelief, trying to process how close he had come to falling. And his breath trembled as the truth settled in. The whisper had pulled him back. He stepped farther from the ledge, legs shaking, and looked again at the forest around him, suddenly aware that he was not alone, not in the way he had assumed, not in the way loneliness had been whispering to him all week. He sat on a fallen log and placed his head in his hands, overwhelmed by the certainty that something had intervened, something that knew his name, something that cared enough to call him away from danger. The wind picked up again, but now it sounded gentle, almost comforting. And he felt a warmth in his chest that rose like a quiet flame, lifting the weight he'd been carrying. For the first time in a long time, he felt seen. He whispered, "Was that you?" into the fading light, not expecting an answer, but a soft breeze brushed across his face like a nod. He stayed there for several minutes, absorbing the moment until the trembling in his limbs softened into peace. And when he finally rose, he walked back the way he came with a new steadiness he had not felt before. As he exited the woods and saw the first porch light of his neighborhood flickering in the distance, he realized something within him had shifted. Something he didn't yet have words for, but knew would stay with him for the rest of his life. He felt gratitude bubbling up in his chest, gratitude for a whisper that called him away from a fall he hadn't seen coming. Gratitude for a presence that refused to let him face danger alone. Gratitude for the reminder that God was nearer than he had believed. He knew his life would still hold challenges, arguments at home, pressure at school, and episodes of doubt, but he also knew he would never again assume he was unseen. He walked up the back steps of his home and paused at the door, whispering, "Thank you," into the night sky. And though the wind remained calm, he felt the same warmth settle around him like a quiet embrace. And so Noah carried that moment forward, telling no one at first because it felt too sacred, too personal, but holding it close whenever fear rose, whenever confusion returned, whenever he questioned whether God heard him, because the memory of that whisper stood as proof that heaven had reached into the woods and spoken his name with purpose. If he ever doubted again, he would return to that memory and breathe deeply, knowing the same voice that saved him once would guide him again. And though he never heard it quite the same way afterward, he felt its presence in other moments, in sudden peace during stressful days, in unexpected encouragement from others, in quiet nudges that redirected his steps, and in every gentle reminder that he was not alone. His life began to unfold differently after that day, shaped by the understanding that unseen protection surrounded him. And he grew into the kind of young man who listened not only with his ears, but with his heart. The kind of young man who believed that God still speaks, still guides, still calls us by name when danger hides in places we cannot see. And as he grew older and looked back, he realized that the whisper had not only saved his life, it had awakened his soul, teaching him to walk with awareness, humility, and trust in a world that often feels too loud and too uncertain. Yet he knew God was always near, and that was enough. Welcome, dear friend. This is Faith Light Stories, where every story reminds us that God never leaves us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as this story comes to a close, I want to invite you to reflect on the moments in your own life when you felt a nudge, a whisper, a pull towards safety or truth or hope, even when you could not explain it. For those moments are not accidents, they are invitations. They are reminders that heaven watches over you. And I encourage you now to share your own experiences in the comments so that others may be strengthened by your story. Because your voice matters and your story may be the light someone else needs today.